parents and carers, welcome to the Year 6 SATS meeting.
So during this meeting today, we're going to cover various aspects, key dates, general information, the exams that your children will sit, scores and results, how those results will be sent to you, writing and science, and how to support your child. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to just email into the school and they'll forward on to your class teacher.
Okay, so this year SATS week is starting on Monday the 9th of May and it is running till Thursday the 12th of May. The first SATS paper your child is going to sit is on Monday the 9th, and it is the grammar and punctuation, followed by the spelling test. On the Tuesday, it is the English reading paper. Wednesday, it is the maths arithmetic paper and the first of the reasoning. And on Thursday, it is the second reasoning. So it's a total of 6 papers in total.
And it's important to note there's no exams on the Friday.
So we have updated our timetable for this spring term. Hopefully you're all aware now that our 6GK's PE day has changed. So 6C and 6S have PE first thing on a Monday and 6UK have PE first thing on a Tuesday. Due to this, it means our guided reading slots are much quicker and have to start bang on 9:50. So would be very appreciative if we can ensure that your children are punctual to school, making sure that we can make the most of the day and all the interventions that we have put in place are able to get up and running with your children who are in school. We also have started our new rotation on a Friday, so the children are going to be having their PE, art and computing lessons. We've decided to put this in a rotation, so myself will be teaching all the PE, Mrs. Gale will be teaching the art, and Miss Cooper will be teaching the computing. This is to help get your children ready for secondary school, getting ready to have new teachers for different subjects, moving classrooms, moving spaces, and also being responsible for moving their belongings as well.
Thank you, Miss Smith.
So I'm just going to talk you through the first SATS paper, which Miss Cooper said was on Monday, the 9th of May. It's the grammar, punctuation and spelling. The children sit 2 papers for the grammar, punctuation and spelling. One is a short answer paper and one is a spelling paper. I will show you some examples in a moment of some test style questions. They have 45 minutes unless they're allocated any extra time for the short answer paper, and that is a total of 50 marks. The spelling test is teacher-led and it's not actually timed. It usually takes between 20 and 30 minutes, but we can go at our pace, which is quite nice, and I'll explain that to you in a moment, how we read the questions to the children. That's worth 20 marks. So overall, the grammar, punctuation and spelling assessment is out of 70 marks. Here are some examples of test style questions. You'll see that there's lots of multiple choice, lots of tick boxes that the children are really used to seeing, and we've been using these in class since September, so they're very familiar to your children. One thing that we would like you to note, and we are speaking to the children about this, is if they are writing an answer, so it isn't a multiple choice, they need to make sure that it is punctuated and spelt correctly. So for example, if the question is asking them to put a comma into a sentence and they put the comma in the correct place, if they have not started that sentence with a capital letter and they have not spelt all of the words in that sentence correctly, they wouldn't get the mark, even if they put the comma in the correct place. We do advise and we do speak to the children about using really simplistic vocabulary in these answers. It goes against everything we ask them to do with their writing, but it really helps with their spelling, because we don't want it to be that they've tried to use a word that they can't spell and actually the mark was for a comma and they didn't get it. That would be a real shame. So we just advise that they keep it really, really simple.
Yeah, it's good exam techniques as well.
Yeah. And with the spelling paper, like I said, it's not officially timed. We usually get 20 or 30 minutes. The teachers lead it, which is nice for the children, very familiar with this style. We would say the word, we would read a word in a sentence so that they can hear the meaning of the word, and then we would repeat the word again. They would write the word in that line where there is space there into the sentence. Here are some examples from previous SATS papers. And the children come in every morning and they are practicing these spelling rules. They've also got the Year 5-6 statutory word list in the back of their home learning diaries. So we would advise that maybe they go over some of them because they have come up in the past. But the spelling test is usually quite nice. The children are fine with it and it's all done quite low key. So, and that is worth 20 marks, and then the marks are combined for the 70.
It's important to note here that the spellings are not differentiated, so all the children receive exactly the same 20 spellings, and we don't know what they will be.
Okay, so on Tuesday, the 10th of May, your child is going to sit the reading comprehension paper, and that is just one paper. Children do tend to find this paper quite challenging, as they only have an hour to complete it, and they have to read and answer questions for between 3 to 4 texts. These texts cover a range of genres, so it could be a poem, a non-fiction, and a fiction. So it is really, really important at home your child doesn't just read one genre of text, they are covering a range, so it's not a sudden shock to them in May when they have to answer questions on a poem. It is out of 50 marks in total, and I just want to highlight that this test is the only one that we are not allowed to read questions or words to the child because it is a reading comprehension. All the other tests we can read questions, but this one we're not allowed. They will have 2 booklets in front of them. They will have the reading booklet, which will have the 3 texts which they'll be reading, and then they have the answer booklet where the questions will be and where they will answer as well. In the reading booklet, they are allowed to reread it, refer back to it as much as we want. It is not a memory test, and they are also allowed to highlight any word, write on it, and circle. So it is their booklet, and we train them for this in their guided reading session, so they'll be really, really accustomed to this. The reading comprehension covers a wide range of questions, so we will have retrieval questions where they need to take the answers directly from the text. We'll have author choice questions where they will be asked to explain why, what is the purpose of a word that an author has chosen to use, what impact does it have on the paragraph or on the sentence. And you also have prediction questions as well, where using clues from the text, they will have to predict what is going to happen next. There'll also be inference style questions as well, where they have to look for clues that way and get the answer. And we've been focusing a lot of that in our guided reading sessions.
Yeah, I do love an inference question.
I do.
Okay, Miss Smith, on to the maths.
Okay, so with the maths papers, there will be the first paper will be the arithmetic, and that will be 30 minutes, and that is out of 40 marks. These are 1 mark based questions, and then usually there are 2 2-mark questions, and these are usually based on a long division question and a long multiplication question. So the reasoning paper, they've got 30 minutes, so it's quite a quick turnaround with the amount of questions that are in the paper, and this is the first paper that they will sit. For the arithmetic, it's vital that they have strong times table knowledge, and this will be applied across the reasoning papers as well. So we do encourage that parents and carers are kind of assisting their children, encouraging children at home to continuously practice those times tables, with their recall, because they do need to know them quickly for the arithmetic, and also apply those into reasoning questions in the other 2 papers as well. With the reasoning papers, they've got 40 minutes per paper, and they are 35 worth 35 marks each. This is where the children will see more of their worded problems, usually 2 to 3 step worded problems, and they will be given a box of where they need to show they're working out. Again, we have these discussions a lot in our lessons, that even though some children are able to work out these questions and the methods in their head, it's just really important that they are able to write the methods down and show how they've worked out the answer, because if it's a 2 or 3 mark question, if they don't show their method, they won't get the full marks. Vice versa, alternatively, if they were to write the method and show they're working out, however, maybe they copied the answer down wrong, or they made a slight mistake, the examiner could potentially give them a mark to show that they've got the steps, they've just made a mistake along the way. So the 3 papers added together are out of 110 marks. And later on, we will give you a bit of a breakdown of the thresholds of the marks your child needs to get to reach which standard. So there are, like I said, there's multiple different style questions that you can receive in the papers. So the arithmetic papers are usually based on your addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Again, also applying things like percentages and fractions, which is what we covered all of the curriculum for that in the autumn term. So from now on, it will just be revision. And then, as previously mentioned, the reasoning questions are more kind of worded problems, applying maybe time or measurement or angles, a bit of algebra, and sometimes these are 2 to 3 marks. Children need to make sure that they put their answers into the box, and also making sure that their number formations are really clear. I know I have a really bad habit of my 5s looking like 2s, so just making sure that children are writing the numbers nice and accurately, so they're getting all the marks that they've earned.
Thank you, Miss Smith. So, how will you know how your child's performed? Right, so your children will receive a scaled score for each subject, and the scale score ranges from 80 to 120. Now, a child working at the working towards standard will range from 80 to 99. The expected standard is 100, up to 109, and the greater depth standard is 110 to 120. It's worth noting here that if a child is scoring less than the working towards standard, we then have to have a discussion with parents and the class teachers and the child as to actually they shouldn't be sitting the SATs because they're not working at the Key Stage 2 level. Instead, the children will be sitting a separate paper, which is more appropriate for their level. So how do the government get these scaled scores? So what they do is each year they do a conversion chart, and the children's scaled scores will be based on their raw score. So their raw score is the total number of marks, how many they've got in a test, and then it'll be converted. So for example, at the bottom there in the blue box in 2019 for reading, the raw score was 26 out of 50 to get the expected standard of 100 of a scaled score. So the children need to get 26 or more marks in the paper. To get the greater depth standard, they needed to get 41 or more marks out of the 50 to get that scaled score of 110, and that was the most recent one in 2019, which feels a long time ago. So what have we done as a school? So I have analysed the papers since 2016 to 2019, and we've worked out what the average is for that raw score and standardised score. So for reading, we are going to be pushing the children for this year, and it's good to note at this point we don't know what the scores are. The government wait till the children have tested all the children, and then they work out the average score, which obviously is frustrating for us, but actually we've got enough evidence there to kind of work out what roughly the scores will be. Who knows what they're going to do this year. So working towards standard for reading is 3 or more marks. That sounds quite low, but actually some children, if they're scoring less than that by May, we need to think about actually alternative arrangements. So the expected standard is 28 or more. Now I noticed on the previous slide it said 26, but actually it's gone up to 28, as high as 28. So we want to aim high. So 28 or more marks. The greater depth there is 41 out of 50 for reading, so they can only drop 9 marks across the paper for all 3 texts. GPS, don't forget it's adding both papers, what Mr. Kennedy said earlier. So the raw score there I'm looking at is just the RS, and that's 3 or more marks out of 70. And there's quite a big jump there from the working towards to the expected. So they need to get 44 marks or more out of 70. And for the greater depth standard, they need to get 61 out of 70. So it's really important the spellings all count. So quite a lot of the children in that first paper, which is out of 50, they want to score very highly on it, and actually quite often they do. Once they've learnt the terminology, they do really well. So if a child is finding spellings difficult, we say that if you score highly on that first paper, you've got the opportunity to be a bit more flexible. For the greater depths, they're going to need to be aiming sort of almost 50, and then almost a good score of 15 plus on those spellings. And the maths. So the maths, they have to add all 3 papers. So the working towards standard is 3 or more up to 60. There's quite a range there, and we have children kind of working within that range at the moment. The expected standard by May, don't forget this is by May, is 61 plus out of 110, and the greater depth standard is 98 out of 110. So they can only drop 12 marks to get that greater depth standard across all 3 papers. So it's worth noticing at this point that the arithmetic is what gets them the marks really for the expected standard. If they can get in the 30s out of 40, it's going to hold them in good stead coming out to the reasoning, because once they know those methods, they're going to do really well. If they're pushing for the greater depth standard, they need to be getting almost full marks on the arithmetic and 30 or more out of that reasoning, just to secure the fact that they've got a bit of leeway there of 12 marks. It's not a lot. So that's what will come through, but don't worry about memorising all that. We'll explain that all in the report. So what will it look like in the report? You'll get your child's written report as normal as you've had in year 5s, 4 and 3. But alongside this, because of their Key Stage 2 SATS assessment results, you'll receive additional results sheet, which will look like this, and all the codes will be attached to this. So for reading, it's important you'll get a teacher assessment result. So they always do that every year in case a child, for whatever reason, doesn't do particularly well in the exam. And it does happen. It's just actually we have a teacher assessment result, and that's based on previous assessments and how are they, 4 to 5 days a week in guided reading. And we've got a lot of evidence to secure that. Test result will be their raw score, how many marks they score, and then they'll convert it to the scaled score. And that's what we tell the children. If you see 100 or more, you've got the expected. If you've got 110 plus, you've got the greater depth. Anything below 100 is going to be working towards. You've got writing, which is teacher assessment, which I know Miss Kennedy is going to speak to you about in a minute. The GPS, you're going to have the same things there. Test result, raw score, scaled score, and test outcome. It will say on test outcome AS, which is achieved standard. There won't be anything greater depth expected or working towards, which is frustrating sometimes because actually we want to know, but it will just be, yeah, they've achieved the standard. Maths, the same format, and then science is teacher assessment results. And Miss Kennedy is going to talk to you about that now.
Thank you, Miss Gill. So there are no SATS testing in writing or science. There used to be, but there isn't anymore. And instead, the children are assessed over a long period of time. And again, it's working towards expected level or greater depth, except for in science. I know Mrs. Gale said this in our first presentation, that in science, it's either working towards or expected. There isn't a greater depth standard in science, but we will be having conversations with all the children's secondary school teachers. So please don't worry, if your child is fantastic at science, although we cannot give them a greater depth standard, we can feed that information onto their secondary school, and we will do. So the science papers, science did used to be sampled, where people could come in and just choose random children and get them to sit some papers, and it was like a spot check to make sure that the school were teaching science at appropriate standard. This isn't happening this year. And we're fine, because we know that the science here is fantastic and that the children are getting a really broad and balanced curriculum. It's not just all the English and maths. So we're really confident with how we will grade your child at the end of the year in science. In terms of writing, the children do lots of writing and they are doing so well with it. We're really, really impressed with them. And we work really closely as a team to make sure that we are in-house moderating. So we will share children's books and we will say, I think this child is at this standard. We have evidence that we need to tick off to show that they're that standard. So we would moderate as a team to make sure that we're really, really clear. We'd also moderate with other schools in the borough, cross-moderation, to have that consistency. And we can, as a school, be externally moderated. We won't know till very late on in the summer term, and that is where someone could come in and they could just pick some children and they will say, you have said this child is a greater depth writer, and we have to prove it. And we think that it's a really good thing, actually, because we're really confident with the grades that we give the children. And it's just making sure that it's consistent across all the borough and that everybody's getting that fair grading system. So the writing's in a really good place and we're really happy with it. So that's how the writing and the science will be graded, and we work hard behind the scenes to make sure that the children are going to secondary school with that accurate level.
Yeah, it's good to know at this point. The last time we got moderated, schools get selected at random, we were 100% accurate. So with our so we've got a very rigorous assessment system within our school, which we're really proud of. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Okay, so supporting your child for the reading comprehension SAT. It's really important that you hear your child read aloud daily, if possible. Our homework policy is at least 5 times a week for 15 minutes a day, but daily would be preferable. Even if your child is a really competent reader, a really fluent reader, they still need to be reading daily, please, because this does have a huge impact, exposing them to a wide variety of vocabulary. Once your child has read, please make sure you ask your child questions about what they've read, and ask them to find evidence in the book to support their answer, just so they're not just word recalling, their comprehension and understanding of what they have read is really solid as well. And also visit your local library for free materials. Talking about that range of genres again, I know children tend to buy books, for example, fiction books that they really enjoyed stories, but going to libraries, it means they can access the poem books and the non-fiction books, and our reading scheme as well supports that. So there's a wide variety of non-fiction and fiction in our school library.
We do have up on the website a list of recommended reads for Year 6, but we also are in a really privileged position where we have a Year 6 library in the block, and that's both upstairs and downstairs, where we have more advanced books that are aimed at Year 6 and not for the rest of school. But I know that Miss Kennedy's worked incredibly hard at opening the library again. So after COVID, that library's open and your children visit that once a week, and that has been a fantastic resource that we have opened up. So do get in contact with your child's class teacher. If your child is a reluctant reader or they haven't tapped in, there's a lot of historical fiction that we've got here, which the children are enjoying. So do get in contact with us, because we've got so much.
Lovely. And at the back of your child's homeschool diary, there are comprehension questions you can ask them. So once they have read aloud to you, please be going into the back of the homeschool diary and asking them a variety of questions. So for example, you have application questions there. You also have analytical questions. And if you're asking them a question, for example, can you explain why so-and-so is feeling upset? Could you then also be saying, okay, so where is the evidence in the text for that? So they can go, well, the evidence is, because in SATS on the 2-mark, 3-mark questions, they do need to give a point and also an explanation. And sometimes it does say, support your evidence from the text. And that's where they must be able to quote from the text directly.
Thank you, Miss Cooper. So GPS, every year, I think parents say to me, Miss Kell, how can we support with GPS? I don't even understand the terminology. So don't worry, because actually it's just kind of going over that terminology. YouTube's great. We're going to move on very quickly to actually supporting your children revision guides. CGP is great. Also at the back of your children's homeschool diary, like Miss Kennedy said earlier, the statutory spellings are there, year 5 and 6 and year 3 and 4. So you can use them as additional spellings as well. But if we go on to the next slide here, we can talk about Google Classroom, CGPs and LETs, and also additional resources. So I'll hand over to Miss Smith.
Yeah, so we've transferred all our homework over now onto Google Classroom. So you'll see it displayed on their classwork page, and their homework is in a weekly different assignment. So within the assignment, there will be an explanation as to what they will be revising. So for example, in the maths homework, it is usually related to our learning from a week or two before, or if we've noticed over the past few weeks any gaps. So from our gap analysis from our previous assessments, we noticed that the children hadn't quite secured their percentage knowledge and some fractions. So we'll be covering those again this term. Within the assignment, there will be some arithmetic questions and then some reasoning questions to get them ready for both style questioning. And alongside those will either be a tutorial video from some of the members of staff, or videos from maybe YouTube or BBC Bite Size. So again, asking the children to have a watch of those videos if they're unsure of how to find percentages or what the method is. We will always explain those either via a video from ourselves or off a very useful website. Alongside Google Classroom homework, there's plenty of revision guides out there which are super helpful. The CGP have been kind of a consistent resource for many years now, and give some great SATS prep questions. They also break down each topic and then give you some SAT style questions to go alongside them. And there you can see there that there's expected stand and also greater depth if your child is pushing for that. Alongside CGP books, you can also have a look at the LETS books. These are kind of 10-minute tests again, and also test papers, all alongside the SAT style questions. And you can get these either in shop or also online.
There'll be a separate document that comes alongside the slides where you can just actually click onto the link and it will take you straight to the relevant website. So thank you for that, Miss Smith.
And then, yeah, so alongside this, like I previously mentioned, BBC Bite Size is a great resource. We've got things like Exam Ninja, the Rising Stars. There's some revision guide and some apps for those. Another great one for times tables. Obviously, we push TT Rockstars a lot in school, so hopefully your children are very familiar with that. Also, Hit the Button is a great resource for times table practice if they want to change things up a little bit. Again, just reiterating, as Ms. Cooper said, just making sure that children are reading a vast range of text, not just all fiction, just to make sure that they're being exposed to different styles of writing and questioning as well. And Mrs. Gill, do you want to talk about the SATS papers?
Yeah, so we would like you to, I know it's very tempting to actually look at the SATS papers from 2016 to 2019, but we use them for assessments. And as much as we would like you to go home and print them and use them, actually it makes our assessments kind of, it's quite obvious when the children have done them, and we just want to make sure that we've got an accurate judgment our end. So if you do want to use past SATS papers, can we ask you to go to the ones about 2015? Now, some of them will be old curriculum, but actually the reading comps pretty much stay the same. There's not much change there. So actually they're still as relevant. Or let's do very, very good SATS papers at the moment. Like Miss Smith said earlier, these are really good and they've got practice papers and they're exactly the same format as the SATs. So I've got a couple of these copies in school as well, which we use for boosters. So they're really, really helpful, but please don't do 2016 plus. We'd appreciate that. So SAT support sessions, we'll just kind of come to the end of our presentation now. We have been running SAT support sessions since sort of just after October half term. We had to stop them for a little bit, obviously due to COVID, but actually we're back up and running in round 2 in January. We're incredibly lucky that we have a really strong team. It's not just the Year 6 teachers, it's also Mrs. Hawes, Miss Wolf, Miss Mia, and our fantastic LSAs who are doing interventions galore within school. So they do a phenomenal job and they tell us how much work they're doing quite regularly. So some of these sessions take actual place during school. Some of them, a lot of them take place during school. Some of the sessions take place before school and some of them after school, and they range. Some of these sessions are aimed at expected children and some of them are aimed at greater depth children. And the reason why they're selected, it may be that they just need a little bit of a push. or they might need confidence. Quite a lot of it is confidence and just kind of retaining that. We had a previous question from a parent just about actually, can we request our child to be in that? We would say before we put the child into it, we'd ask for a meeting and just to actually talk about which areas that they're worried about, just to share with their assessment results. And actually quite a few of your children are receiving quality first teaching, which I mentioned in the previous presentation, and we feel that confident that they're going to make it with all the teaching that we're delivering at the moment. So please don't worry if your child's not in it, is my advice. And if you are worried, get in contact with one of us, because we've got lots of reasons. If you do have any questions, please do email them into the office, and I know that our wonderful office staff will forward them on to us. We hope it's been really clear, and we hope it's helpful. It's always really well received every year, but there's always a few things that you may have in terms of questions. Sometimes questions come up about additional time. We are just looking at the SATS access arrangement. It's not as simple as a child just gets additional time. There's quite a lot of forms that we need to fill in, and it's got to be day-to-day practice. So we're just at that point at the moment. So in terms of extra time, it will be your class teacher getting in contact with you if your child is eligible for that. But in the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we hope the presentation has been helpful. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.